Welcome one and all, of course, to yet another edition of Indaba, the voice of the Emancipation Support Committee. Of course, the voice of the people, the place to find consensus and the place where knowledge grows. I am here with the activist extraordinaire, and we're going to learn just how much of a relevance that statement is. I know I use it all the time, and some people may think because they haven't been doing their homework, maybe they've been under a rock somewhere, that it's hyperbole, it's some kind of exaggeration. But no, I kid you not. Our co-hosts on this program are absolute pan-African magic. We are not here with Dr. Claudius Fergus on tonight, but we do want to bid our YouTube audience a very pleasant good evening. We also want to bid our Facebook audience again a very pleasant good evening, good night, good morning, depending on your time zone. We have quite a doozy on tonight. We'll be, of course, treated to another ESC report, bringing us up to speed in terms of all the goings on with regards to the Pan African Festival, which commenced on the 25th of May, African Liberation Day, and is still ongoing until we climax on the 1st of August. Beyond that, we'll be looking at the Africa Report tonight, courtesy Dr. Claudius Fergus. So the African scholar, the scholar activist, the scholar of the people, is not here in person. But don't worry. The Africa Report was tabled, and we'll be looking at a preliminary report with regards to Azanian politics. What is Azania, you may ask? Well, it is South African general elections. A little snippet, a little sneak peek preview. I'm sure that Dr. Fergus is going to give a more detailed and more, as it were, robust report. There's a number of things in flux, but this is a precursor to things to follow. Last but not least, we'll be looking at decolonization of our spaces. And to that extent, we will have our scholar activists. I'll be taking a back seat in that segment. I'll just be in awe, listening to the great rapport between himself and a very, very special guest, Ras Guarapo, with regards to this whole issue of the decolonization of our spaces. In some cases, 512 years, some cases a little less. We have seen all kinds of genocide, all kinds of crazy attacks against the people. But we have monuments to these genocidal maniacs, and these amazing activists are going to unpack that for us like never before on tonight. Without further ado, we want to welcome front and center stage Rene Francois to do the ESC, as it will report. So many things happening in real time. We look forward to her. Oh, there's a smiling face now. Well, I know you can smile now. You can breathe a sigh of relief because two of your big shows, two of your big events have come and gone. The first being the amazing launch on the 25th of May at City Hall Auditorium. And then, of course, Iwa Africa, the Pan African fashion extravaganza. But I don't want to steal your thunder at all. A very pleasant good night and welcome to the front stage. You always do an amazing job behind the scenes. But again, to the both of you, Brother Shabaka Kambon, and of course, you, our precious sister, a very pleasant good night again. Welcome to front stage.
Good night, Reverend.
Hi, good night, Reverend Kwame and Shabaka. Good night to our listening audience. So yes, like I said, we're the emancipation season is quite underway. We had our media launch on the 25th of May, and we had our Iwa Africa folklore fashion show on the 2nd of June. We had an amazing turnout, and it's one of the events I really look forward to because I love seeing what people can do with African fashion, how they can take your African prints or traditional silhouettes you would find on the continent and really do something amazing with it. And our designers showed us time and time again why they are powerhouses in the Caribbean when it comes to fashion. So it was a really good event with lovely performances. Wasa Foley, Judah. It was good vibes.
So my follow-up question is what's
Mhm,
next? Well, two questions.
mhm,
Huge event. Brother Shabaka already told us that this is one of the fan favorites, and people come out in their extraordinary numbers. I'm assuming that this year, like
But
all of the previous years, one, it was a hit in terms of the turnout. But with regards to that really coveted ticket, was that adjudicated? Was that given out on the night, or is that something to come a little later on? And the screams and the excitement. Walk us through that. Walk us through that.
No, yeah. So the door prize was awarded. Unfortunately, I was not in the audience to see, but I did hear, the round of applause and
it
the
looked like a
the
very nice lady won it.
okay, right. So
A ticket
Shabaka
to
was
any
inside at the
destination.
time. Yes. And yeah, I think people just really enjoy the ambience we were able to create at Central Bank and taking it inside this year.
I saw
We
the. I sat behind some of the ambassadors, the Mexican ambassador, the Venezuelan ambassador, some members of the diplomatic corps, and I can tell you they thoroughly enjoyed the show. Some of them brought their parents and families, and I had a
Powerful.
chance to speak with them. They really really enjoyed the show. They enjoyed the fashion.
Yes, and I've noticed that as we've come out of this COVID pandemic, we're getting a lot of support and interest from the diplomatic corps coming to the media launch, coming to our fashion show. Last year we had a really nice presence at our Yoruba Village Drum Festival, and I'm looking forward to see the public's turnout. If we get any support from the ministers and of course the diplomatic corps as we go into launching the lecture series. This is carded for this Sunday, which is the 9th of June. And we have Miss Jemima Pierre coming to speak on Haiti. She's Haitian American, and she's really going to be discussing the issue of imperialism and Haiti. And I think it's a really important topic as the
Mm,
Caribbean continues to push for
nice.
reparations,
For
as we
sure.
continue to discuss and call for the decolonization of our, not just our physical spaces, but the systems and institutions that we have to live in and abide by. And I remember having a very interesting conversation with an elder, and she was pointing out that you know when we are granted reparations, it would be of no good if we aren't decolonized, if we still have that colonial mindset, if our institutions, our education system are still kind of, following
Absolutely.
those processes,
Wow.
it will be all for naught. And
Yes.
I think I'm really looking forward to hearing what Dr. Jemima Pierre is going to discuss with us this Sunday. It's a free event. It's also another opportunity for us to partner with the University of the West Indies. I
Perfect.
believe the first time we would have partnered with them would have been during the pandemic. They were helping us really sort of transition into this virtual space. And now
Absolutely.
that, like I said, the pandemic is over, it's good to know that that relationship has not ended. So we really want to encourage persons to come join us at the Learning Resource Center, UWI St. Augustine, Sunday the 9th of June, 4 p.m. It's free. And come with us and be a part of the discussion and be a part of the solution, because I continue to think of the wider Caribbean as custodians for Haiti. They would have initiated that very important rebellion, and we
Absolutely.
have to continue to assist them in their fight for their freedom and self governance. Right?
Absolutely.
But before I leave, I also want to put persons on alert that one of my favorite events, the Yoruba Village Drum Festival, is also coming up. It's Saturday, the 15th of June. It's the day before Father's Day. It's an event we also hold in tribute to fathers. in the community and throughout Trinidad and Tobago. And people can look forward to seeing roughly 20 something drumming and dancing groups perform. And we also do this very lovely procession around the community right before we start the event. So next week, we will have have more information about that event. But yeah, I want to encourage the public to please visit our Facebook page. You're going to get the most up to date information, and share with us. Feel free to comment on the our flyers and our content, and let us know what you're looking forward to, and if you're attended, what you thought, what you enjoyed most about our events, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Oh, excellent, excellent. I have three questions back to back, really quickly. One, a little birdie, he's here tonight. Talked about an all girls, all women drumming group, and I'm not sure if you had a chance to have that backstage discussion concerning whether or not we'll be seeing them, perhaps courtesy one of the diplomatic attaches. I don't know, but is that in the making? Is that still a work in progress? Are we in a position to say yay or nay? What's going on with the all female drum corps?
Right. So it's a work in progress, and hopefully, at our next program next week Wednesday, we'll be able to give you some more concrete information. But we haven't forgotten them. I think that would be a lovely dynamic to bring to the drum festival. So we're not going to count them out, and we're working on that confirmation.
Thank you for
Okay.
that. The second question that comes speedily, of course, as we congratulate Gloria Moray, was the person that actually won the ticket. Seeing Pearl, thank you backstage for that advice. So congratulations to her. We don't know where she has decided to go, but that's between her and Cal. But I do wish her all the very best. As we move on, last question would be with regards to the partnership with the University of the West Indies for the Kwame Ture lecture series kickoff. Is it going to be a hybrid event, or is it going to be in person only? Now that we have switched from a pandemic period to open society once again. No pun intended. No pun intended.
So because we are celebrating 25 years of the Kwame Ture Memorial Lecture Series, we really wanted to go back to how we would have originally carried out the program and the series. And so in that regard, we are having it strictly physical. We are working with media houses to see if they are interested in carrying the launch, but right now it's a physical event. Yes, and we understand there are positives to taking a hybrid approach, but again, we really wanted to commemorate the 25th anniversary of Kwame Ture lecture series in a way we've grown accustomed to.
Yeah.
The
Absolutely.
rest of the series will be online. The rest of the lectures will be accessible online.
Okay, beautiful.
But
And
don't
what are
forget
some of the
to come out.
topics
You can bring
coming
out the
down the line?
family. Bring out your family. Bring out your family and come, Reverend. Bring the family. Bring some members of the community. Come and sit down and
There's
talk
no
about
doubt.
it.
There's no doubt.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Anything intellectual, count me in.
Mhm.
Of course, the rest of it would be online. We are advised, which is awesome, which is amazing. But I'm really hoping that we can capture it by way of a video recording, so that it's in our archives for legacy purposes. Maybe some type of future broadcast, maybe launch by way of Facebook, maybe launch by way of YouTube sometime thereafter. Again, posterity's sake, I think that would all go well. But we want to thank you. We want to thank you for being front stage and doing your due. Do you have any clips to share with us on
Yes,
tonight?
so I do have a very short clip, but a very interesting clip of Dr. Pierre making a contribution on a interview, and I would leave the segment with that. Yes.
Oh,
Thank you,
thank you.
Renee.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Pleasure is ours, absolutely. Yeah,
I want to say
exciting times,
quickly,
exciting times.
just to touch back to the question earlier, is the reason I say Haiti is a laboratory, because this is the first coup d'etat that was sanctioned by the UN, and Haiti was ruled by a multilateral coalition of all these countries. And so the UN occupation of Haiti through MINUSTAH and through the core group is multinational, multiracial, and it almost seems as if this is a humanitarian effort as opposed to a coup d'etat that has been successful. And so the whole world is participating in the occupation of Haiti unwittingly, because, and this is how we have to remember how the US will work, and they will use their proxies to do the dirty work for them. And I want to say what's happening.
Dr. Jemima's not even here, and we're getting revelations already. Reverend? She's one of the leading voices of the generation on Haiti. And of course, she's able to speak to some of the nuances that many of the other commentators are not able to. That's Dr. Jemima Pear, professor of global race in the Institute of Race, Gender, Sexuality, and Social Justice at the University of British Columbia. And she will be here for the launch of the Kwame Ture Memorial Lecture Series, one of the most prestigious, public lectures on the national calendar annually. So you don't want to miss that at all. This Sunday at the Learning Resource Center of the University of West Indies, St. Augustine campus at 4 p.m.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for that. Marvelous job. So as we segue into the next segment of tonight's program, we'll be dealing with the Africa Report. And tonight, the Africa Report is focused on the issue of the South African elections. Now, I hate to say it. Brother Shabaka, my warrior activist. But I told you. I told you. This is one of those I told you so moments, and I'm enjoying all of my bragging rights, all that they are worth. I said that the kingdoms are coming for it. I said that they were going to upset the elections because the people were really disenchanted by the Westminster style of governance, there was some doubt. But I'm not going to preempt Dr. Claudius Fergus's presentation. I am going to allow Dr. Fergus. I'm hoping there's an apology in there somewhere. but if not, when you come back, Dr. Fergus, because we are sure you are listening on tonight.
Dr. Fergus's report, we can say 2 words about this matter. I think just to bring some clarity, brother. But you did indeed suggest that the MK would perform better than some commentators. I wouldn't call any names suggested.
So without further ado, we give over to backstage. Please queue up the Africa Report for tonight, the South Africa General Elections update, courtesy Dr. Claudius Fergus. Over to you.
On the show tonight, the ANC is between a rock and a hard place.
That was Clement Manya Taylor of SABC, Face the Nation on Tuesday, the 4th of June.
Our people have spoken. Whether we like it or not, they have spoken.
And that was President Cyril Ramaphosa of the ruling ANC. The people have indeed spoken, but certainly not with one voice. At least 60% of the voters have had enough of the ANC after 30 years under 4 presidential regimes. The pollsters were right. The game changer was the new kid on the block, Mkhonto we Sizwe, except that Mkhonto did much better than predicted, coming in as the 3rd strongest political party in the next National Assembly. This week's Africa Report is preliminary, since there is more political uncertainty now than before the elections. Some politicians are still beating the drums of electoral war, while others are struggling to balance ideology and self-interest. In other words, many critical election issues are still to be settled. We will begin by looking at the distribution of parliamentary seats. Relative to 2019, there were two losers in the 2024 elections. The ANC losing 71 seats, moving from 230 to 159, and the EFF, which dropped from 44 to 39. The Democratic Alliance gained 3 seats, taking their tally to 87. MK romped home with 58 seats. Even the number of political parties contesting the elections went up, from 14 in 2019 to 18 in 2024. Collectively, the smallest parties also increased their seats from 42 to 57. Although the ANC won only 40% of the national votes, they are still by far the largest party in the 400-seat assembly, almost doubling its closest rival, the DA, which has 22%. One day before the elections, the ANC would not imagine itself in a coalition. Now listen to the ANC's Secretary General.
We're talking to everybody. There's nobody we are not going to talk to.
Theoretically, if all the parties opposed to the ANC should agree to a coalition, the ANC would be out of power. But such a scenario is probably the least likely to happen. The Constitution mandates that the new members of the National Assembly must sit within 14 days after the declaration of the results and elect a president. It is unrealistic to expect meaningful negotiations among 17 parties to be concluded within such a short time. But even more daunting than the number of parties are the differences in ideology and the irreconcilability of their main demands. Let's start with the first runner-up, the Democratic Alliance. The DA is capitalist or market-driven in its ideology, what political theorists would call free market or liberal or even neoliberal. The party is backed by big business and dominated by whites, many of whom have roots in apartheid-era politics. It rejects affirmative action for black empowerment. Yet its leader, John Steenhuisen, is seriously considering an alliance with the ANC, which espouses social welfarism, a minimum wage, and a national health service, all strongly opposed by the DA. The main reason for an ANC-DA coalition is to keep the EFF and MK from government, at least from Steenhuisen's position.
Make it our number one priority and do absolutely everything in our power to prevent an ANC-EFF doomsday coalition from taking power.
That was John Steenhuisen. Interestingly, the EFF and MK also see doomsday in an ANC-DA alliance. The future of the EFF will also be further threatened by MK's growing popularity. Julius Malema, leader of the EFF, who has been a thorn in President Ramaphosa's side for the past 5 years, says he has no problem with Ramaphosa seeking a second term if the EFF is included in a governing alliance with the ANC. One principle that the EFF says it cannot compromise is expropriation of white-owned land without compensation, a policy which requires a constitutional amendment. But an ANC-EFF coalition will still fall short of a majority in the National Assembly. Currently, Ramaphosa is not opposed to land reform, but is strongly against amending the Constitution. Even so, to amend the Constitution would require a minimum of 267 votes, which would be difficult to muster. An ANC-MK alliance will cross the 50% mark, but Mkunto is the cancer eating away Ramaphosa's political future. The party rejected the results of the elections and demands a rerun. The leadership claims that the elections were rigged by foreign and local capitalist forces to influence an outcome that would favor an ANC-DA coalition that would protect white and foreign interests. Yet MK is not averse to a coalition with the ANC. However, the conditions they have set are formidable. These include that Ramaphosa must not be president, that MK's leader, former President Jacob Zuma, must be pardoned, that the Constitution must be amended to allow Zuma to take up a seat in the National Assembly, thus paving the way for him to become president. MK's followers are passionate about taking back the power that they claim they had given to the ANC to bring about a revolution which failed to materialize.
They must mark our way as commanders of this revolution. We fought for this country.
We joined MK at the youngest age of us. We went to exile and fight for this country. And we told them, when they were looking down on us like nothing, they were on power because of us, because of the fight we put. And we are demonstrating to them now with that power you were given by us, and we are taking our power back.
Let us conclude this edition of the Africa Report with what is at stake politically. The biggest prizes are the president and deputy president, but other powerful posts are also part of the negotiations in who gets what. The Speaker of the National Assembly is the next most prestigious political office. Then there are several important political posts, including those supporting the presidency. Dozens of high-profile political offices, such as Minister of Finance, Attorney General, and Minister of Foreign Affairs. Associated with the distribution of these spoils is the premiership of the 9 provinces. The Constitution allows for minority government, so after 14 days, Ramaphosa might be back in the saddle. And with liberal appeasement to the DA, the Inkatha Party, and other mini-parties, he might weather the storms to the next elections. But I don't really think he could. Whatever the outcome of the ongoing negotiations, South Africa is in for its biggest shakeup since 1994.
Very interesting. You need to unmute because I didn't quite hear an apology there. But
Okay, so,
another scintillating and dynamic edition
so
of the Africa Report, breaking down as it were the first, second, third, and fourth place, of course, in order of greatest proportion. First, it will be the ANC. Followed by the DA. I would call them the residues of the apartheid regime and structure, even though they have some black faces there, representing white interests most certainly. In third place, of course, the MK party. They tried to stamp His Excellency, as I would have referred to him, Jacob Zuma, out. There was in the run-up to the elections, very interesting intrigues. Certainly, one being debarred from taking a seat because of the previous, as it were, conviction. It was an 18-month stint. He spent only 3 months. The rest of it, by way of presidential pardon, he was able to not have to undergo favorably and thankfully. And then, of course, in fourth place, the powerful, the enigmatic, the dynamic, revolutionary speaker, the giant of Pan-Africanism, that is Julius Malema and the EFF party. But the kingdoms, their collective voice, even in the limited time that they had to prepare for the election, 6 months or so, really from October of last year to now, they really haven't had a chance to do any major politicking. I shudder to think what would happen, in 5 years from now. I think it's lights out for the rest of them. But that's my bias, because I definitely support kingdom politics being restored on the continent. But what say ye, coming out of this very interesting scenario? There's still a decision to make. If you were a betting man, who do you think is going to form the alliance? Do you see an ANC EFF, an ANC as it will MK, an ANC DA? I think His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa is really between a rock and a hard place in terms of this decision. But what say ye, my Pan-African extraordinaire?
well, first of all, brother, let me say that you were right in seeing the importance of the royal family, the aristocracy, royal families, and the nations of South Africa. That was an important thing, and I'm glad that we were able to have representatives here on Indaba, so people can hear their voices. But you will recall that I did have, according to my polls, MK was in third place. I think that the one commentator in our program who felt that the MK would underperform, or who suggested that, was Dr. Fergus, based on credible evidence that they seem to be imploding. But my engagement with the trade unions, with the civil society organizations in South Africa, there was a great deal of discomfort with the ANC, and many of them had also chosen to pursue the future of the freedom of South Africa through the MK. So I had suggested a strong performance as well. Of course, I was, of course, taking into consideration the information that Dr. Fergus had brought in terms of the implosion in the party. But people are genuinely frustrated with the ANC. One young person explained to me that the treatment that they receive when they demonstrate or protest problems in South Africa from the police is on par with that of the treatment by police in the United States of America or in some of the worst fascist countries on the planet. And so there's a sense that the ANC really is not living up to its promise or its promises. And we wait to see what happens there.
Sure.
But let me welcome our guest here, a brother from Venezuela, a history maker, someone who 100 years from now, his name will be remembered when people put the events of this century into place, because of a very important role that he played in Venezuela in 2004. Let me just put this into quick context for you here. Let me say that, ever since indigenous and African voices had a chance to be recorded, they expressed their discontent with the public glorification of Christopher Columbus. That's going back into the 19th century. But the very first, political attempt to remove, to end that glorification, starting with the Columbus Day itself, is actually in Trinidad and Tobago at independence. In the 1960s, we could take pride in the fact that because Columbus Day was placed on the same day as Emancipation Day, to end our remembrance of that period of enslavement, we were drawn to the day. And we started the global activism in this country to end Discovery Day, to end the celebration of Discovery Day, which we did 10 years before anybody else in 1984. Yeah, the period when Discovery Day starts to collapse is the 2000s. Trinidad does it in 1984. Yeah, in 1977, indigenous people get the opportunity on the world stage to speak for the very first time in a historic conference in Geneva. And in that conference, the closing paper, the final document of that conference, on the very first paragraph, they call for an end to Discovery Day and the celebration of the celebration of Christopher Columbus. But the very first people to remove the statues, the public monuments, is this gentleman right here, Ras Guarapo. He's one of those people who took that rope and put it around the colonizer's neck in Caracas, Venezuela in 2004. And so we want to welcome him and hear from his voice what he intended to do in 2004. Did he understand that he was making history at that time? Ras Guarapo, welcome to Indaba.
Inhalia, Selassie, Ja, Rastafari. Greetings from the lands of Cacique Huaycaipuro, the Caribe chief, of the Maroon Jose Leonardo Chirinos, first African rebellions in these lands, and from the lands of Bolivar and Chavez and all these comuneros and comuneras that are building this new nation for all of I and I. Eh?
Yes, and I just want to say to our Caribbean audience that here it is that Rastafari is having an impact in Venezuela, playing a historic role in the rebellion, the revolution, the changes taking place in Venezuela. That religion that I think we give to the world. I could say that the Caribbean people, this is the Mecca of Rastafarianism. We're very proud to have one of our brothers and sisters representing that tradition, participating in this history. So, brother, tell me, did you understand that you were making history in 2004? You were the first people in the world to drag down this disgraceful monument to genocide. Did you understand that is what you were doing?
I would have to give credit to our dear Rastaman Burning Spear for that song. Christopher Columbus, Isa, Dan Blas. What about the Arawak Indians and the few black men who were around here before him?
That's right. That's right.
So actually, I didn't know that part of Trinidad, and I'm really honored to hear that. Because, it's these Caribbean peoples who are rising up and, taking the lead in decolonizing the world and fighting along our brothers and sisters all over the world. But I have to also mention that the big family, the familion, as we call the communities that one of the organizations we use is Proyecto Nuestra América, Project Our America. They come from the guerrilla process of the 70s and then started movements in the 80s, student movements. Mm-hmm. And in the 80s, they wanted to bring down the statue, and the political situation was, of course, absolutely against during the Ade and Copey governments. So they thought of putting some explosives and blowing it at night. But that didn't happen. When the Bolivarian Revolution came and President Chavez took a level of leadership in denouncing colonialism as a whole, but also like the image of Columbus itself as a symbol of supposed liberation. So that word was in the street, and as youth, we said, we have to bring this down, and we're not going to do it at night covering our faces. We're going to do it on play daylight. We're going to do a popular trial there, and we're going to bring it down.
Yeah, let's see. We have some footage of that day. Let's take this opportunity to see that footage. Renee's backstage with it. Renee, bring up that footage, that historical footage here for our audience to have a look at it.
Lo que estamos haciendo aquí hoy, 2 de octubre, Día de la Resistencia Indígena, es un juicio popular del Tribunal Popular de la Pachamama a Colón y a todo el colonialismo, el viejo y el nuevo, por estos más de 512 años de explotación y de genocidio en este continente, en esta Pachamérica completa, desde Alaska hasta la Patagonia.
Nos las pagó durante 500 años, nos mancilló esta gente y los yanquis igual. Ahora se acabó esto, señores, lo que queda es revolución y punto.
¡Victoria! ¡Victoria! ¡Victoria popular! ¡Victoria! ¡Victoria! ¡Victoria popular!
Stunning images indeed.
Victoria Popular, boy.
Yeah, Victoria Popular. That's right.
It's incredible. So I heard someone say in Spanish in that clip that they were going to take that statue, that monument, to the Teresa Carreño as a present for President Hugo Chavez, who was going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Tell the people though, how did Chavez receive it at first? Was he happy to see this present at first? Did he receive it well at first?
Actually, no. Chavez was a little impacted. I guess he didn't expect it to go out like that. So at first, like it was 2004, so it's a little different than what we have today in terms of the global awareness of the issue.
The awareness, yes. It was you all were first. You guys were first.
The Spanish ambassador. The Spanish ambassador was calling, and like there was all this pressure. We were also like in the middle of coming out of a coup d'etat by the right wing backed by the US. So like, it's kind of like you don't want to push too far like the unity of the revolution when you have all these aggressions against.
Yes.
But we thought like this is the right thing to do, and if you're making a revolution, you got to do it. And there's no way around it.
But President Chavez came around eventually, didn't he?
Yeah. After some time, some brothers even went to prison who stayed up on the statue, and they went a couple of months. But then Chavez, they went out free, and then Chavez, in many occasions, sort of reclaimed the action. And there's a story when he was in Bolivia, and he was telling the story, and he said like, we toppled the statue. So
bring the kid, let him say hello. Greetings, young man. Greetings, how are you?
Just say you'll see him walking around a bit.
All right, no problem at all. No problem. I look forward to meeting him when I come back to Caracas.
Yeah, man.
But so as I said, you guys made history in 2004, and you see it took another couple decades before the rest of the world began to catch up gradually. I mean, the 2000s are the period where Discovery Day comes into question, and more and more countries start dropping the Discovery Day in favor of indigenous resistance, a day of indigenous resistance, which was declared in Venezuela. And what year was that?
2000. I think it was the year 2000 or 99, either 99 or 2000.
You all declared the Indigenous Day before you removed the statue.
Yeah. Actually, the statue action was during Indigenous Resistance Day.
Indigenous Resistance Day. Excellent. And so, history was made there. And of course, during the Black Lives Matter movement, in that period, there more statues of Christopher Columbus came down than any other conquistador or historical villain all across the Americas. It was incredible for those of us who understood the history all this time to see that happen, to see the end of the imperialist narrative of discovery, because that's what these statues represent. They represent narratives that were created during the colonial period to serve imperialist interests. That's what these monuments really represent. These monuments are the representative of narratives that continue to hold us back from real, genuine independence and freedom. And so we have a real responsibility to go through them carefully and decide which ones are not fit and proper, not just the monument, but the narratives for us to maintain as a people. And so once again, Ras, we want to thank you. And we want to talk a little bit now about what we are doing here in Trinidad. Reverend Kamau, you're going to come in and participate in this discussion. But in the last couple of weeks, we have handed in a report on our national monuments. Of course, the first monument in that report is Christopher Columbus. And what we've done, just to quickly itemize, is we've shown that the Vatican itself, the Catholic Church, on March 30th last year, they repudiated the doctrine of discovery. Really important for the listeners to understand that the way that Columbus behaved when he came to the Caribbean, when he came to the Americas, was not based on his own volition. There are about 9 papal bulls. We highlight maybe 3 or 4 in our document, which we think are the critical ones, which call for non-Christian people to be subjected to perpetual slavery, to have all their possessions removed, and so on. These are the dictates of the popes of the church in the late 15th century. And together they were called the doctrine of discovery. And together indigenous people had been calling for decades since they discovered the doctrine of discovery. I think they discovered it in the 1990s. It was 1992 when indigenous people realized that the genocide in the Americas was based on papal bulls from the 15th century, and that those papal bulls were still operating through legal systems in settler colonial countries like the United States, Canada, Australia, South Africa. They were still impacting the discourse that they were having around land ownership today. And so they began this quest to have those papal bulls repealed. And when they started to burn churches in Canada is when the Vatican acted. And of course, they didn't actually repeal, but they repudiated, which was an important step. And of course, once that is repudiated by the Vatican, once they condemn that type of, and the Vatican release actually talks about the colonial mentality. Once they condemn that colonial mentality, Columbus has no legs to stand on anymore. You know, no one should continue to harbor, monuments to this particular criminal. That he is finished. You know, that discussion, there's nobody defending Columbus anymore. Is there a Columbus lover in this crowd? Please raise your hand. You're going to find it very difficult to find one. And of course, all the narratives that were developed and designed to obscure his violence, all those narratives then fall apart with the repudiation of the doctrine of discovery. So that's the first thing we tackle. And of course, that's going to be an interesting read, because within that aspect of the document, we're going to discover that Columbus became a godlike figure. He was worshipped. The people tried to have him declared a saint and so on over the last few hundred years there. And people will learn more about how that narrative was used by imperialism to continue the subjugation of our people. I have Brother Corey Gilkes with us. Corey, are you there?
Hi, good evening. Right here. Peace to be in the company of Guarapo.
Rastaman. Thank you, brother.
Rastaman.
Yes, Rasta. So we're going to spend the next 15 minutes or so looking at some of the things that we have within our own report here in Trinidad and Tobago, and Ras Guarapo is going to join us. Brother, you can ask questions. Feel free to join in as you see fit. But basically what we've argued, just to set off the conversation for the next 15 minutes, is that if we continue to celebrate the people and values that we do now, at best, they will continue to have to exert their insidious impact on our society, maintaining the colonial status quo, the white over brown over black, and all the other legacy items we have from colonialism. At worst, we argue, they will be fully rehabilitated. The values they represent will be fully rehabilitated, and they will come back to contest for the center stage of politics in our country, much as what is taking place in large parts of Europe and North America with fascism. You know, in certain countries like Italy, they did not do enough to end the open glorification of the fascist dictator Benedetto Mussolini and the values that he represented. And today, those values are coming back in Italy, in France, in Germany, in other parts of Europe, in Eastern Europe and Western Europe, and contesting for center stage in all their most vile, forms. That is possible as well in the Americas if we don't take very seriously the values and people that we're celebrating in our public spaces. That's the gist of the argument that we are making for a full review of all the public monuments we have here in the Caribbean.
Yeah. What I would add, can you hear me there?
Yes, brother, I'm hearing you.
That how with the Black Lives Matter movement, like, let's not forget that even that, took brother George Floyd to be executed in the street. Like, it's still the same plantation system that our ancestors were fighting back. It's still there, and never forget the importance of taking the street in action and honoring the people who have fallen in this struggle. There's too many.
Indeed. And brother, I have to say, one of the things that I suppose we didn't do here, I mean, we didn't go to the extent of putting a rope around our statue's neck. Perhaps some of us were a little bit nervous about jail time, but kudos to you and your friends. And of course, some of you all paid the price for that with jail in Venezuela. I actually met one of the brothers who went to jail.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Hey, did you meet Freddy or?
Yes, Freddy. Freddy.
He stood on the statue with a Venezuela flag because the police eventually came and they sent some tear gas and thing, and we sort of walked back, and the man stood with a Venezuela flag on the statue, and they took him.
That's how it went down. Yeah. But what I like about Freddy is that Freddy remains a revolutionary, and he remains true to those values. And he does not regret making that sacrifice to move history, to stand on the right side of history. So kudos to Freddy again in Venezuela. Corey, you've done some research on that monument to what's his name in South, the statue to Carnegie.
Not the statue. Good evening, everyone.
Sorry, the statue. Yes, the monument in the form of a library.
Yeah. In fact, when I did the research for your report, after I gave you my article, I came across another book, and the information that I got, it was even worse than what I had sent, because in addition,
yes, Corey, well, we were well aware this guy was Carnegie was at the center of the modern eugenics movement, and not just at the center as an individual, but as a sponsor. So he was one of the chief sponsors in the 20th century of the eugenics movement, which had as its aim the liquidation of the inferior races of the world. We're talking about, to assist those races that were inferior to decrease their numbers, and that's what he did. And of course, we have a monument to him in San Fernando, a library that honors his name. And again, I think that really speaks to the kind of depth of evil, if we could use it for want of a better word, that we are celebrating in our public spaces today.
Well, the fact is that even in many historically Black universities in the United States and many other parts of the world, you find that the name Carnegie is on many institutions of learning and many libraries. And one of the things that we are often told is that he did so much for the furtherance of education across the world. What we are not told is that when he was embarking on this education program, it was specifically for the furtherance of education in selected British colonies to ensure an Anglo and white American solidarity for the furtherance of colonial domination, because they were of great concern in the late 19th century of a rising screams for nationalism. The Indian Mutiny of 1857 terrified a lot of the ruling elites. And Carnegie, and this is one of the ironies of history, projected very heavily the Tuskegee educational model that was founded by former enslaved African Booker T. Washington. But he did it with the intention of pushing vocational education among the darker skinned races, African, Indian, indigenous peoples, so that there would be less people who would be going into the direction of, let me say, W.E.B. Du Bois, who would be challenging from an academic and legal position colonial domination. They were
Yeah,
also
so
very concerned.
I think that's really important, Corey, because we're talking there about colonial epistemic violence, using knowledge, practicing violence on or through knowledge. And that's a really that's one of the areas of colonialism that we really talk about the least. What Ngugi wa Thiong'o says, he describes as the empires of the mind. He says we're aware of the physical empire, the military, the politics, the economics, but what we miss is the empires of the mind, the extent to which colonialism went to work in its violence, practiced its violence on our minds through narratives, through our own history, the way it told us our history, the way it depicted itself, the way it depicted its violence in our past, and so on. Everything that it did in terms of knowledge, in terms of information, was part and parcel of the atmospheric colonial violence that Fanon talks about. Violence
you have some experiences with that in the form of the changing of the name of Milner, who was a contemporary of Carnegie. He was in league with Andrew Carnegie, the name Lord Milner. And we do remember the battle to change the name of Milner Hall in UWI.
Well, I'm glad you raised that because in producing the document and editing the document, we had to go back over some of the funny parts of that experience. And one of the things that stands out when we look back at the whole Milner Hall episode is that in 1962, the Caribbean was much further ahead than we were in 2017, 2018, when the discourse came up again, because this issue came up in 1962. And Eric Williams at that time, and I wouldn't go into the details in terms of how we understand how did Eric arrive at that point at the time, but the Caribbean had a much stronger radical tradition in that period, in the 60s, in the 50s, in the 70s, right up to the mid 80s with the demise of the Grenada Revolution. We had a radical political tradition, and that radical political tradition, sitting alongside the mainstream conservative political tradition, meant that we had a politics that was far more advanced than it is today in many ways. And so in 1962, Eric Williams was ready to remove the name of Alfred Milner from the oldest hall of residence at the University of West Indies St. Augustine campus. He was familiar with the crimes of Alfred Milner, and he thought the name should go. That's our conservative prime minister, the first leader of the PNM. But you jump forward now to 2017, and when we take the very same issues that Williams was aware of, and we raise them with the campus principal, Brian Copeland, he is dead set against the removal of the name of Alfred Milner, and he goes to town immediately to do whatever he could to stop that name from being removed. And on top of that, much to our shock and surprise, the students who are resident on Milner Hall, now understand this, if you go to Yale or Harvard or any of the elite institutions in the world during that period, down to South Africa, Cape Town University, it was the students who fought the administration to remove the names of vile perpetrators of historical crimes. At the University of the West Indies, it was the students who fought to keep the names in 2017, 2018.
One even went so far to make the astonishingly stupid statement that if it wasn't for slavery or colonialism, where would we be today?
Correct. That is that's Darian Mitchell from Tobago. He was chair of the hall at the time, and now he seems to be quite an important youth figure in Tobago. So you have to ask yourself, has he learned something, or is he going to continue and then find himself in the Tobago House of Assembly eventually, bringing those backward views to the people there and all the implications that would have, which means that we're going backwards instead of forward. But this guy actually, as you said, he celebrated imperialism, colonialism, and slavery in his defense of Alfred Milner. Of course, the Milner Hall eventually fell, but even in that last period where they agreed to remove the name of the hall, the principal, Brian Copeland, then went to work to ensure that it would not celebrate a regional hero. The hall would not glorify one of our heroes who had stood up against imperialism. No, he wanted to make sure that it had a name that was arbitrary, so they renamed it Freedom Hall. You know, and that is part of the tragedy of the tragic role of Negroes, contemporary Negroes. Ras, you might not be familiar with this term, but during the period of enslavement, the word that was used for our people was Negro, and Negro for men, Negress for women, and of course we reject the term, but we use it as a pejorative for those who refuse to understand their past and their present, who refuse to understand their identity. Some of them would actually be proud of the term itself. But so we don't use that term as a term, but as a pejorative term. And in fact, Corey, I'll say this: when I was looking at the notes from that period, and I have it in the report, the Master of Ceremonies on Milner Hall was a Harvard graduate by the name of Felipe Noguera. That historic meeting. And after Darion Mitchell made that defense of slavery and imperialism and so on, he fell back in his chair and he said, "'Tis folly to be wise." You know what was he quote? "'Tis folly to be wise. Where ignorance is bliss. Where ignorance is bliss, it is folly to be wise." And then the next day I interviewed him, and he said it was like a goddamn Negro factory up in Milner Hall. He'd never seen anything like it. He was dispirited, despondent. He couldn't find adjectives to describe his despair upon experiencing that which he saw at Milner Hall. All that is in the report, and I'm looking forward to really sharing that information. And of course, one of the things that we're concerned about is perhaps they're still calling it Milner Hall. I think some of the students and the principal at the time conspired to find a way to continue to use the name Milner. So all that is something we have to look into, as is the case with Mandela Park in town. We have a situation where there was a national committee set up. They removed the name of King George V and renamed it Mandela Park. And the government in power at the time put up a wooden plaque saying Mandela Park. The next government to come into power put up a huge concrete structure next to it saying King George V Park. So there's a lot more going on in the country than meets the eye. And I think that the period of national consultation will give us a chance to air some of those issues and to have some real discussions, some groundings about what the future should hold. So Ras, in terms of, we don't have much time left.
I have a song.
No, but wait, before you go to song, let me ask a question.
All right.
What took the place of Columbus in Caracas after you removed him? Who is there now?
Actually, at one point it ended up in the Guaire River. Some brethren took it and they were melting some pieces. I don't know, because and there was from the mayor's office, there's this office that takes care of public
yes, public artifacts, yes.
And I think they're restoring it, but I don't know where it is. It's not displayed anywhere.
Yeah, but
when we toppled it, we didn't put anything back, but the idea was, to put a figure that honored the resistance. So then the government ended up putting Huaycaipuro, the Caribe chief,
Yes.
along with other caciques from the indigenous resistance. So it's good. It didn't happen like it happened there with Freedom Hall or whatever. Like,
Yes.
actual people were honored, and I think that's something to give credit also.
Definitely, definitely. And I think that's a blueprint for us here in the Caribbean. When we remove Columbus, it's not to celebrate music and sport, but to celebrate those people who stood up against him. Baucanar, Hayarima, and others who would have been the early, would have been the would have made their sacrifices with their lives and their energy to resist his imperialist efforts. I think that's a really good a good example for us, brother Ras. Corey, Reverend, any closing remarks?
If I may, before I allow Corey, as a matter of fact, let me allow the guest. Corey, you go ahead and I'll just do an editorial wrap up on the back end. It's just been a pleasure just listening to you guys chop it up. So Corey, it's been a while since we've had a chance to really dive deep. I'm hoping maybe post program we'll get that chance. But what are your closing remarks as at this time as we look at the contradictions, the stark contradictions between what is being said in terms of reparations, what is being said in terms of celebrating our African history and legacy, and these monuments to genocide? What is your closing remark? What do you want to leave in the consciousness of the viewing and listening audience by way of YouTube and Facebook on tonight?
Well, on the face of it, the contradictions seem glaring and pessimistic, but the reality is that we are at a particular juncture where there's a lot to be hopeful. You are seeing a whole lot of things happening on the ground that may not be reflected in the media, but it is happening. Student activism, there are small meetings taking place, including places in Trinidad I've been to within the last couple of weeks. So there's a lot to be hopeful for. What we need to do, if need be, go back to the basics, what the activists of 1968, 69, 70 were doing, street level education, but we have a medium, not that they didn't, the internet, to spread awareness among the working people here, as well as in places like Venezuela, Haiti, etc., and let the chips fall where they may, because there's a lot of discussion taking place right now, a surprisingly high level of discourse taking place. So I'm hopeful. Very hopeful.
Well, I think that, as I said, power concedes nothing without demand. We have been able to get the government to set up a national committee to look into the issue. I don't think it would be wise for us to take our eyes off the prize, because no guarantee that what will happen that in terms of no guarantees coming out of that committee, no guarantees at all. There's no guarantees that anything will change. We have to continue to advocate for the changes we want to see.
That's where the awareness comes in. It's essentially subversive education that we need to embark upon.
Well, I think that the type of education you're talking about there takes place every time one of these monuments to colonial violence is removed. There is an education element to it. Once it's done properly, there is a huge education element. Even if it's not done properly, it does find its way into our curriculum one way or another. It undermines the epistemic colonial violence that continues to wreak havoc in our imagination in the contemporary period.
Absolutely. There's a song that I heard about. Our audience is going to be treated to a song. This I've got to see. With regards to the process straight out of Venezuela, a Ras activist breaking barriers and showing that this melting pot of of indigenous and African and other contributions continues to create resistance, not only in terms of the toppling of monuments some 20 years ago, but also in the continuance of this religious revolution that is, or more so, spiritual revolution that is Rastafari. So, without further ado, we hear what?
Yes, I'm going to join you if you don't mind.
Of course, my brother.
Guitar. So by way of song, we're gonna have Ras Guarapo sing and play for us. To be accompanied, I think this is an Indaba first, to be accompanied by activist extraordinaire, Brother Shabaka Kambon. Without further ado, gentlemen, please have at it.
Okay, so how much time we have to see if we do the short version or the longer one?
Short
version. Okay, so this is called Fire in the Prison Babylon. We'll do the first short part, all right? Here we go. Selassie Jah Rastafari, honored to be in this Indaba. Fire, there's in the barrio, the thunder's rolling, Jah Rastafari, the lions roaring, there's mutiny in the prison Babylon. Fire burn. Jazz is the wig, cause your weapon is a wit. No longer can they fool us with their alcohol and wit. Babylon beware, organized we are. Enough of the abuses of the present and the past. Rivers they dry, live, soil lives the scars. The elders they kill, use love, top and heal. In the hills today, we keep on our resistance. Working the land with Pachamama's brilliance. Black people we are, with million-color skins. Shamans in maroons, drums banging till we win. Fire, there's in the barrio, the thunder's rolling. Jah Rastafari, the lions roaring. There's mutiny in the prison Babylon. Fire burn. Yes, Jah won.
Fire burn.
Jah Rastafari.
Right. Thank you, Ras. Respect.
It's recording.
Boy, nice. You gotta come and do that in person here in Trinidad, bro, soon.
Yeah, my brother, it will be a pleasure, yeah? And you're welcome, Venezuela, anytime.
I'm gonna call you next time I'm back in Caracas.
Yes, my brother, please do.
Take care, brother. One love. Good night.
Reverend Kwame, Brother Corey, Brother Shabaka, and Sister Renee, and Sister
All the
Sakia.
best to you.
Greetings. Honored.
Absolutely. So on tonight, my job would be to bring the curtains down on yet another edition of Indaba, the voice of the people, the voice of the Emancipation Support Committee, the place to find consensus, the place where knowledge grows. I want to say a very special good night to King Dan Man out of Jamaica, Jamrock, Ras Guarapo, Firebun. That's in a good way, in the sense of showing solidarity for his song. Of course, we salute you, King Dan, out of Jamaica there. We also have out of St. Lucia, the Crow, the Caribbean Rastafari Organization chair, tuning in on tonight. Grand Rising family. Ilanola is in the house with regards to same. And then we have Princess Aina joining us on tonight out of Burkina Faso, bringing royal greetings to us here at Indaba. We see you, Your Royal Highness, and we greet you especially on tonight. We also have on tonight as well Deborah E. Walters out of New York, bringing greetings to the Indaba family. One of a huge fan, the first person usually to comment tonight, because of circumstance beyond her control, wasn't quite the first, but always makes it to the live and always allows her voice to be heard. Adiemi Hines out of southern Trinidad, activist in his own right, Pan-Africanist in his own right, saying, please, can it be recorded? The it he's talking about is the Kwame Ture lecture series launch, which will be taking place, of course, at the University of the West Indies. Please call the ESC for further details concerning how you can participate within same. I am advised it is free of cost. And yes, it was confirmed, Ras Adeyemi, that it would be recorded. Dr. Clive Ebanks out of Honduras. His Royal Highness is also greeting us from the Kingdom of Judah in America. So we have definitely a cross section of Pan-Africanists joining us on tonight to show their solidarity and support. Again, smash a like on this particular video. Please continue to share this with your friends and family. Tonight we dealt with a number of issues. One, we spoke about the latest goings on at the ESC by way of the launch on the 25th of May, which was a tremendous success at the City Hall Auditorium. Following that, on the 2nd of June, most recently, there was Iwa Africa, as it were, an African fashion show extravaganza. Richard Young et al. Came out in fine form, 25 plus designers, 60 plus models. The giveaway of a CAL ticket, basically return to any destination in the world. Again, congratulations to Queen Sister Gloria Murray, who enjoyed the benefit of that prize. Following that, of course, by way of Africa Report, we heard from the activist extraordinaire, the activist scholar, the academic activist, Dr. Claudius Fergus, dealing with the issue of the South African general elections and the results, the preliminary results thus far, because as at this time, there isn't a clear president. Will the ANC, will His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa make a deal with the DA? I think not. He has two options then, therefore, it's between the EFF, who has been really sticking it to him in as it were, the legislative arm of the governance for the past period, not letting up on at all with regards to the process, or will he go in the direction of MK? Of course, I would prefer that he go in the direction of MK for three reasons. One, His Excellency Jacob Zuma came out of the ANC as part one. Part two, the ANC used to be the South African Native National Congress, and it used to be a political party that was created by the chiefs and kings for the chiefs and kings, and there would have been, as it were, if they had their way, a House of Lords, House of Commons with regards to the process. That did not happen because there was some subversion, there was some buying, there was some white supremacist tactics being brought to bear, and before you know it, the ANC lost its aristocratic, its kingdom mandate, and it became a pure civil society approach to dealing with things. And by the time it gets to 1994 and that great movement there, it had totally lost its historic, as it were, underpinning by way of the kingdoms. So we'll look to see what happens, and definitely whatever the outcome, you'd be sure to get it here live by way of Indaba. Of course, last but not least, tonight we talked about the whole issue of the decolonization of our spaces. Now, in 2020, we would have seen, by way of the George Floyd tragedy and incident, a global, as it were, a worldwide protest against white supremacy. Many statues would topple, many, as it were, monuments to genocide and racism and slavery were destroyed. Unfortunately, even though there was a lot of surface work done by way of the removal of monuments at the level of institutions, in 2024, we saw the reverse of affirmative action, and there are a number of other things that tell us 4 years later we have not necessarily progressed. Will that be the case in the Caribbean? Will that be the case in Trinidad and Tobago? Will that be the case in Venezuela? Some 20 years later, after having done what they have done by making history, toppling the statue of Christopher Columbus We see, of course, certain tensions within Venezuela. There are issues in relation to Venezuela and Guyana right now over the Essequibo region. So while we are very big on monuments, while we are very big on the removal of the statues and the monuments to genocide, there is another element to this that we have to secure. And certainly through scholars and activists like Brother Shabaka Kambon and others on the program, we'll definitely keep our eyes on the pulse, our eyes on what's going on, and report to you in real time. And if we need to call out the troops, I'm sure we'll do that. Well, we are out of time, but we are not out of faith. We are not out of love. We're not out of words. This has been yet another edition of your favorite radio program. We want to thank Talk City 91.1 FM for hosting us. Was not hosting us on tonight because of another program that they had to cover by way, I think, of regional cricket, if I am not mistaken. But for all intents and purposes, we'll be right here next week, Wednesday night, to deal with the issues live, dealing with your questions, dealing with your comments right here on Indaba. Until then, again, a very pleasant good evening, a very pleasant good night. See you soon.
All right, Kwame. I just wanted to touch on the South African situation there, like the historical context that you give there. I think that could do with some elaboration and some discussion. But we're happy that that version, as was reflected in the interview we did with the royal chiefs, was aired tonight. But I think that needs a little more discussion in terms of how we get from the status quo of the ANC, 100 years ago, or close to the beginning of the 20th century when it's founded. I don't remember the exact date. To what happens when it comes to power, and what happens in the relationship between the royal families and the ANC and so on. I think we need to elaborate a bit more on that, going forward. But again, thank you, Kwame.
Pleasure. Pleasant good night, listening audience.
Good night, all.
To understand the crisis in Haiti and what needs to be done, the Emancipation Support Committee of Trinidad and Tobago, in collaboration with the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine, invite you to come and hear young and dynamic Dr. Jemima Pear, one of this generation's leading scholars on Haiti, address Haiti and the crisis of imperialism in the Caribbean. It's happening at the 25th anniversary launch of the Kwame Ture Memorial Lecture Series on Sunday, June 9th from 4 p.m. at the Learning Resource Center, UE. Admission is absolutely free. Don't miss it.